Sometimes the strongest move a woman can make is silence. Not because she's weak, angry, or playing games, but because she finally realizes her worth. The moment you stop chasing someone who takes your energy for granted, everything changes. Men often don't react when you beg for attention, but they notice deeply when your attention disappears. Today, we'll talk about the two shocking reactions men usually have when you stop contacting them and why your silence can become your greatest power. The moment you stop contacting him, something unexpected begins to happen inside his mind. For a long time, he may have become comfortable knowing you would always be there. Your texts, your calls, your attention, and your emotional energy became part of his daily routine. When someone constantly receives attention without effort, they often stop recognizing its true value. But silence changes everything. The absence of your presence suddenly creates a space he cannot ignore. At first, he may think you are simply busy or taking a short break, but as the hours or days pass, curiosity slowly turns into concern. He begins checking his phone more often, wondering why your name no longer appears on the screen. He notices the quiet moments where your conversations used to exist. The emotional comfort he once took for granted suddenly feels missing. This is when realization starts to grow. People often fail to appreciate consistency until it disappears. Your silence forces him to reflect on the role you played in his life. He starts remembering your kindness, your support, your loyalty, and the emotional connection you provided. The energy he barely acknowledged before now feels valuable because it is no longer easily available. What makes this reaction so powerful is that you did not beg, argue, or chase him for validation. Instead, you chose yourself. That decision alone changes the dynamic completely. Confidence and self-respect naturally attract attention because they communicate strength. When you stop overextending yourself for someone who gives little in return, you remind them that your presence was never something they were entitled to. Sometimes distance becomes the lesson that finally opens someone's eyes to the value they almost lost. One of the most shocking things that happens when you stop contacting him is the fear that suddenly begins to grow inside him. As long as you were constantly reaching out, he felt emotionally secure. He knew you would reply, check in, and continue giving your attention no matter how little effort he made. That comfort made him relaxed. But the moment your messages stop and your energy disappears, uncertainty takes over his mind. Silence creates questions that attention never could. He begins wondering if you are moving on, talking to someone else, or finally realizing your own worth. Even if he tries to ignore it at first, your absence slowly becomes impossible to overlook. Human psychology works in a powerful way. People often react more strongly to the fear of losing something than to having it consistently available. He may suddenly start checking your social media more often, noticing changes in your behavior, or trying to find signs that you are no longer emotionally attached. The attention he once took for granted now feels uncertain, and uncertainty creates emotional pressure. This is where many men begin reaching out unexpectedly. They send casual texts, react to stories, or create excuses to reconnect because they want reassurance that they still have access to you. What truly impacts him is not anger or dramatic arguments. It is your calm withdrawal. Your silence communicates strength because it shows that your happiness does not depend on chasing someone who gives inconsistent effort. That realization can deeply affect him because it changes the power dynamic completely. The moment you stop prioritizing someone who barely prioritizes you, your energy becomes more valuable. People naturally notice what they can no longer easily control or predict. Your absence forces him to experience what life feels like without your constant presence. And that emotional gap often becomes much louder than any words you could have spoken. When you stop contacting him, the silence begins revealing truths that were hidden by constant communication. Many people stay emotionally attached because they are distracted by temporary attention, mixed signals, or empty promises. As long as you keep reaching out, you may continue hoping things will change. But distance removes confusion and exposes reality for what it truly is. If someone genuinely values you, They will notice your absence and make an effort to reconnect. Real feelings naturally create action. A person who truly cares does not comfortably let the connection disappear without concern. On the other hand, if he makes no effort at all, the silence gives you an answer you may have been avoiding for a long time. It shows whether the relationship was built on mutual care or one-sided emotional investment. This truth can feel painful at first, but it is also freeing. Sometimes people hold on to relationships because they fear loneliness more than disappointment. They continue chasing attention from someone who only responds when convenient. But silence interrupts that unhealthy cycle. It allows you to step back emotionally and observe the relationship without emotional pressure clouding your judgment. You begin noticing patterns more clearly. You recognize who only enjoyed your attention without truly valuing your heart. You understand the difference between someone who likes temporary comfort and someone who genuinely wants to build a meaningful connection. This awareness becomes powerful because clarity protects your peace. The most important thing silence teaches is that effort should never feel forced. Love, respect, and care should flow naturally from both sides. When you constantly carry the relationship alone, you eventually lose yourself trying to maintain something unbalanced. Pulling back helps you reclaim emotional control and reminds you that your energy deserves reciprocity. Sometimes the hardest truth becomes the most necessary lesson. The moment you stop chasing people who are unsure about you, you create space for healthier relationships, deeper self-respect, and emotional peace that no longer depends on someone else's inconsistent behavior. When you stop contacting him, something powerful begins to happen within you. Instead of spending your time waiting for replies, overthinking messages, or wondering how he feels, your focus slowly returns to yourself. The emotional energy that was once being poured into chasing someone else finally starts flowing back into your own life. This is where true transformation begins. Constantly seeking attention from someone who gives inconsistent effort can quietly damage confidence. You start questioning your value, your attractiveness, and even your worth as a person. The more you chase, the more emotionally exhausted you become. But silence breaks that cycle. The moment you stop overextending yourself for someone who is unsure about you, you begin rebuilding your self-respect. You start noticing how peaceful life feels when your happiness is no longer controlled by someone else's behavior. Your mind becomes clearer. Your emotions become calmer. Instead of anxiously checking your phone, you begin investing time into your goals, passions, friendships, health, and personal growth. That shift in energy changes everything. Confidence naturally grows when you choose yourself repeatedly. You begin realizing that your value does not decrease simply because someone failed to appreciate you properly. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your heart, your time, or your emotional support. Understanding this creates emotional strength that many people never develop. Ironically, this inner confidence often makes you more attractive. People are drawn to those who respect themselves because self-worth creates a powerful presence. When you no longer chase validation, approval, or attention, your energy becomes calmer, stronger, and more magnetic. You stop appearing desperate for love because you are no longer abandoning yourself to keep someone interested. The greatest power comes from emotional independence. It means knowing you can love deeply without losing yourself in the process. It means understanding that your peace matters more than temporary attention. The moment you stop chasing someone who gives the bare minimum, you begin reclaiming the confidence, dignity, and emotional balance that were always yours from the beginning. One of the most surprising reactions that often happens when you stop contacting him is that he suddenly tries to come back into your life. After days or even weeks of silence, you may notice unexpected messages, random calls, social media reactions, or small attempts to get your attention again. The same person who once seemed distant or emotionally unavailable suddenly becomes curious, attentive, and interested. This shift confuses many people, but it happens more often than they realize. When your attention was constantly available, he may have assumed you would never truly leave. Your presence felt guaranteed, so he never felt urgency. But once you pull back and focus on yourself, he begins realizing that access to you is no longer certain. That uncertainty creates emotional tension. Suddenly, he wants to reconnect because he feels the possibility of losing you completely. Sometimes he reaches out casually, pretending nothing happened. Other times he may become more emotional, expressing how much he misses you or how often he has been thinking about you. In some situations, he may even start putting in more effort than before because your silence forced him to recognize your importance. The absence of your energy becomes louder than your constant availability ever was. However, this is where emotional wisdom becomes extremely important. Not every return is genuine. Some people come back simply because they miss the comfort, attention, and emotional support you provided. They miss the access, not necessarily the responsibility of a real relationship. This is why you must pay attention to actions instead of getting emotionally swept away by temporary attention. Real change is shown through consistency, effort, respect, and emotional maturity over time. Anyone can send a message when they feel lonely or uncertain. But genuine intentions are proven through behavior. Your silence teaches you to stop accepting breadcrumbs and start recognizing your true value. The moment you stop settling for inconsistent effort, you begin creating higher standards for the love and treatment you truly deserve. The biggest transformation that happens when you stop contacting him is not always about his reaction. It is about the way you begin seeing yourself. For so long, you may have measured your worth through his attention, his replies, or the amount of effort he gave you. When someone becomes emotionally distant, it is easy to start blaming yourself and trying harder to keep the connection alive. But the moment you finally step back, you begin realizing how much of yourself you were sacrificing just to feel valued. Silence becomes a form of self-respect. It shows that you are no longer willing to chase someone who cannot meet you halfway. Instead of constantly proving your importance, you begin understanding that the right people will naturally appreciate your presence without being forced to. This realization changes your mindset completely. You stop tolerating bare minimum behavior. You stop making excuses for inconsistency. You stop settling for temporary attention that leaves you emotionally drained. Most importantly, you begin protecting your peace instead of constantly fighting for someone else's validation. That emotional shift is incredibly powerful because it helps you rebuild your confidence from within rather than depending on someone else to provide it. As time passes, you start feeling stronger emotionally. The urge to constantly check your phone fades away. The anxiety slowly disappears. You become more focused on your own happiness, goals, and personal growth. Instead of asking, why doesn't he choose me? You begin asking, why was I settling for less than I deserve? That change in perspective can completely transform your life. True self-respect is understanding that your value does not decrease because someone failed to recognize it. You deserve effort, honesty, consistency, and emotional security. The moment you stop chasing love that feels one-sided, you make room for healthier relationships and deeper inner peace. Sometimes walking away quietly is not giving up. It is finally choosing yourself after spending too much time choosing someone who never fully chose you. When you stop contacting him, two shocking reactions often happen. He finally recognizes your value, he fears losing you. But the real victory is not making him miss you. The real victory is rediscovering yourself. Your silence is not weakness, it's self-respect, it's healing, it's power. And sometimes walking away quietly says more than 1,000 messages ever could.